Growing some big juicy buns was definitely at the top of my list when I first started the gym, but like most of you watching this video, I went about getting them the complete wrong way. When I first started working out, I used to think that the more exercises I could squeeze into one workout, the more glute growth I would get. But boy, was I wrong. Doing more than a few exercises per session, per muscle group, actually ends up in you just doing random, unnecessary exercises that don't even target your glutes in the first place. Plus, it usually takes so long to get through that many exercises that you end up rushing to get to the end of your workout and don't get the most out of the exercises that you're doing. And that is why keeping it to just 3 core glute exercises is absolute key for glute growth. Okay, so let's jump into the first glute exercise on our list. If I could do any glute exercise for the rest of my life, it would definitely be the barbell hip thrust. And I know what you're thinking, but Sarah, the barbell hip thrust makes me feel like I'm literally going to throw up. And don't worry, I have definitely been there, but when you do this exercise right, I promise you'll not only enjoy doing it, but it is going to be your new favorite exercise for hitting your glutes in their shortened position. There is actually 2 main ways of doing a hip thrust, and if you're feeling it in your back, you're probably doing the wrong one for your body. First off, regardless of the method you are doing, make sure your back support aligns with your armpits. If it's too high, you risk overextending your back at the top of the movement, which is usually what leads to so much unnecessary lower back pain. You should also aim to keep your shoulders locked onto your back support throughout the entire movement. Okay, let's start with the first technique, and that is the scoop method. In the scoop, you want to maintain a forward gaze throughout the movement and focus on scooping the weight up. When you're scooping, most of the movement should really be coming from below your chest, with your hips tilting the bar upwards. Your gaze should be pointed forward pretty much throughout this entire movement, with you lowering the weight as deeply as you physically can and then scooping it back up to the top. But if you are a regular scooper and still get lower back pain, then the hinge method is probably best for you. For the hinge, you'll start your hip thrust looking straight in front of you and end up with your gaze straight up at the ceiling. Throughout the entire hinge movement, your head, neck and shoulders should be pretty much in a neutral line and pivot around your back support. So basically just like a door hinge. Now, if you find the hip thrust absolutely exhausting, like most of us, I recommend doing it on the Smith machine instead. Because not only does this take out the fact that you exhaust yourself while loading the bar from the floor, but it also helps you to stay more stable throughout the entire movement and get closer to failure than maybe you could on a conventional hip thrust. And it is also a great place to start if you're just starting out in the gym and you're a bit nervous going towards barbells straight away. But no matter what variation of the hip thrust you choose to do, make sure you're picking a weight to hip thrust that you can actually control and pause at the top of the movement. And when you get to the top, because this is where your glutes are most activated, you really want to think about squeezing your butt cheeks together. Think about having a pencil in between your butt cheeks that you're trying to prevent from falling onto the ground. Kind of a crazy visual, but it definitely works. You need to try it. The biggest mistake I made when I first started hip thrusting was trying to get 100 kilos on the bar far too soon, and I ended up doing this crazy form hip thrust variation that really made a new exercise in and of itself because of how bad my form was. You only want to increase your weight when you are absolutely confident that you are strong enough that you can lift that weight and maintain good form throughout. And a good way to know that you're strong enough to add weight onto the bar is to follow certain rep ranges. So basically you would start at the bottom of a rep range, say 8 to 10, you would start at 8 reps, and then only when you could get 10 reps consistently with good form in a given weight would you add weight onto the bar, pulling you back down to that 8 at the bottom of the rep range, and then make it your goal to work back up to the top of the rep range again, add weight and rinse and repeat. Now, the next exercise we have on our list is the most beloved Bulgarian split squat. Yes, she is brutal. Yes, she will have you contemplating your entire existence. But she is an amazing squat variation to target your glutes in their lengthened position. Doing a unilateral movement like this is also key for growth because it helps us prevent any muscle imbalances and honestly just prevents us from getting one cheek bigger than the other cheek. And to start the Bulgarian split squat, you're first gonna put one leg out in front of you and then place one leg on your bench or your leg support. And to feel this one in your glutes and not your quads like a conventional Bulgarian split squat, you're gonna want to make a few minor adjustments when setting up for this exercise. First, take a stance slightly wider than you would for a regular Bulgarian. And also make sure when you're doing the movement that your shin is more vertical. So don't let your knee travel so far over your feet when you're going down into the movement, and keep a forward lean in your torso when you're sitting down into the Bulgarian. To really activate my glutes in this one, what I like to think about is hinging back into my hip first and then going down into the movement. This will make sure that you're loading your glutes and not your quads when you're on the eccentric of this move. Now, she is a tough one, so aim for around 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps if you're a beginner, or 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps if you can handle heavier weight and you're more of an advanced trainee. And let me tell you, your glutes will be absolutely fired up after this one. And last but by no means least, it wouldn't be a top 3 glute exercise list without the Romanian deadlift. Romanian deadlifts are my absolute favourite glute exercise for targeting the glutes in their extended position. They pretty much completely remove quads from the situation and completely isolate the glutes and the hamstrings, which is key if we want to get the most glute growth out of a given exercise. But this one is very hard to get right, and honestly the biggest mistake I see people make when doing this exercise is treating it like a bending over movement. When we bend over, we lean over our toes without putting our hips back in space, which causes our lower back to bend. This motion will naturally have any weight that is in our hands be placed on our lower back, which is why so many people feel this movement in their back and not in their glutes. To fix this and to put the emphasis on our glutes, you want to make sure that you're pushing your hips back in space and not focusing on bending down. First, you want to start your RDL with a hip placement that feels comfortable for you. This could be hip width, just outside, or just inside. This is very individual, so try out a few different foot placements and see what feels best for you, both flexibility wise and tension in your glutes wise. Next, you want to think about lifting your chest up and keeping it loud and proud throughout the entire movement. This will help keep your spine in a neutral position and help our back from bending and getting that famous RDL back pain everyone seems to get when they do an RDL. To keep your spine as neutral as possible, you can also think about packing your lats and pushing back slightly against the bar to keep you as stable as possible throughout the movement. And to initiate your RDL, you really want to think about pushing your bum back and up to the ceiling. Also make sure you have a slight bend in your knees, but not too much like you would in a squat. When you lower down, try and keep the bar as close to your legs as physically possible and only go back as far as you can still feel the tension in your glutes. Depending on how flexible you are, this will usually be around knee or mid-shin level. To come out of the bottom position, you want to push your hips forward and lift your chest up. So basically just reversing how we went down. The lowering portion of this movement should be nice and slow and controlled, while coming out of this movement should be much more explosive. This is because we get the most stretch in the lowering portion of this movement, so we really want to stay there for as long as possible to get the most growth out of this exercise. A cue that has really helped me and a few other people that I've told it to is when you are pushing your hips back, think about spreading your cheeks side to side and giving your butthole a bit of air. Yes, it is kind of a gross visual if you think about it a little bit too much, but it really works in helping you visualize how to push those hips back in space when you're initiating the movement. For this exercise, I would recommend beginners aim for around 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps, focusing on mastering the form with slightly lighter weights to begin with. Intermediates can increase this to around 3 or 4 sets, and then more advanced lifters could maybe up their sets when they can handle more weight. Now that we have all 3 of the best exercises mapped out, here is exactly how I would structure a full workout to maximize growth. Personally, I train glutes 2 times a week right now, but I have trained them up to 3 times in the past, just as long as you are giving yourself around 48 hours to recover in between each workout, so you can push as hard as possible when you hit glutes again. I'll also pop up a little 12-week guide on how to progressively overload using this workout to make sure you're getting the most growth possible week to week. But if you guys are looking for a more in-depth guide on how to grow your glutes, including a full workout routine and also nutrition advice, I'll pop a link to my full glute guide in the first link of the description. Let me know if you guys are going to try this workout or any of these exercises in your next glute routine. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully I will catch you in my next one.